On today's episode of the podcast, we are going to talk about what you can learn about marriage from Michael Jordan's new documentary. It's kind of cool. Hope you stick around. All right, first things first. So if you're watching this on video, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or some other video platform, you'll probably notice that my left eye is a little bit red. That is because it's allergy season, and I have the worst allergies, and I've been rubbing my eyes incessantly, and I got a sty. So my eyelid is a little bit infected and gross. And if you hate it, which I wouldn't blame you, then go listen to this on the podcast or close your eyes. And if you're listening on the podcast, count your blessings because it's kind of gross. I wanted to talk today a little bit about the Michael Jordan documentary that's been airing on ESPN over the last couple of weeks called Last Dance. It's about Michael Jordan's career and what makes him the greatest basketball player of all time. And in the most recent episodes that I watched, it was episodes 7 and 8. They talked about how Michael Jordan kind of had reached this pinnacle of accomplishment in the NBA, and his dad had recently been murdered, and he was feeling really stressed out and overwhelmed and decided to take a break from basketball. And he ended up joining a semi-pro baseball team and spent like a year and a half to 2 years playing baseball instead of basketball. And eventually, obviously, he came back to the sport of basketball. And he came back in the middle of the season. The Bulls were kind of having a rocky season without him. And he came in right before the playoffs. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, Michael Jordan's coming back. He's going to help us win a championship again. And people were freaking out and they were really excited. And it didn't work. Like, they didn't win. They got taken out in the playoffs and they didn't win another championship. And one of the reasons why Michael Jordan talks about this is he says he didn't give himself enough time. He'd been spending so much time exercising and working out his body to play baseball that he didn't have time to kind of rebuild his basketball body. And this was really interesting to me because one of the things that I hear a lot from couples, one of the questions that I hear most often is, what's wrong with me? Is something wrong with me? Am I broken? Why isn't my relationship working the way I want it to? Is it my fault? And when Michael Jordan lost that playoff series, he wasn't asking, is there something wrong with me? Am I not the greatest player in the world? He always had the capacity to be the greatest player of all time. That capacity was there. But in this specific circumstance, he just said, I didn't give my body enough time to get into my peak basketball condition. He hadn't built up his cardio. He had been exercising different muscles, and he just wasn't in peak performance. And this triggered this thing inside of me. And I was like, man, there's so many couples out there they have the capacity to have a better relationship than they do, but they haven't taken the time to condition themselves to not necessarily condition their body, but condition their relationship skills to the point where they can have the type of relationship that they're capable of. It reminded me of a conversation that I had recently with a friend of mine. He's a marriage and family therapist named Jonathan Sherman. And he said something along the lines of, you could take the very best lumberjack in the world and you could send him out to cut down a bunch of trees in a forest. But if you give him a butter knife, he's not going to be successful. He's not going to be successful in cutting down trees, even if he's spent his entire life cutting down trees, even if he knows everything there is to know about cutting down trees and he's brilliant at it. He might be a master at cutting down trees. If you give him a butter knife, if you don't give him the right tools, he's not going to be able to cut down trees. Now, if you give him a chainsaw or an axe, it's a completely different story. His capacity is there, but what he lacks is the tools. And I felt like this kind of mirrored the situation with Michael Jordan. His body was his tool, and his tool wasn't in peak condition. And so I want you to take a minute and think about your relationship. What are you capable of? Most likely, you're capable of more than what you have right now. And the reason that you don't have more is probably because you're trying to cut down a tree with a butter knife, or you're trying to play championship basketball with a baseball body. And so the next big question is, what do you need to do to get the skills or the tools or to get yourself into the right condition to live the kind of life, to have the kind of marriage that you truly want? Now, the answer is going to be different for everybody. But one thing I do know for certain is that oftentimes it requires seeking out some knowledge. It requires a little bit of practice. It requires going through some pain. It requires confronting areas of your life where you might be weak. It might require getting a coach, quote unquote, whether that's a literal coach or somebody who can guide you along the path to creating the type of marriage that you want. You know, I look at this documentary with Michael Jordan, and one of the things that really stands out to me is how much credit he gives Phil Jackson, his coach, to the point where he told the owners of the Chicago Bulls, if Phil Jackson leaves, I'm leaving. I won't play for any other coach, because he credited Phil Jackson so much with helping him to become the player that he is and to build a system around Michael Jordan that made winning possible. Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan without his coach, without somebody else there helping him lead the way. Same thing with his trainer. Like, his trainer played a huge role in helping him stay healthy and helping him stay strong and helping him, I read an article the other day that said that his trainer would rewatch the basketball game like the night after it happened, and he would count the number of steps and the direction of the steps that Michael Jordan took so that he could the next day come in and work specific muscles and help him strengthen specific areas of his body so he could recover more quickly and so he could be in peak physical condition for the next game. Like, that level of coaching and detail is what made Michael Jordan great. He wasn't great on his own. He had a team around him, and he had people around him who helped him be at his very best. And I believe the same is true in marriage. So my request to you today, my invitation, is to stop trying to cut down a tree with a butter knife. Stop trying to win the NBA playoffs without a coach. Stop trying to be the best player, a world championship caliber player, without being in peak physical condition. Pay attention to where you're at inside your marriage. Pay attention to where your skill set is at inside of your relationship. And if you're weak, it is worth investing in helping yourself to become stronger in those areas. And the payoff is going to be loving being married every single day. And I can't think of anything that would be more rewarding than that, than waking up literally feeling like you're one of the luckiest people in the world to be laying next to the person that you're next to. That is awesome. That's a great life right there. So that's what Michael Jordan made me think about this week. I hope that hits home for you, and I hope that it inspires you to take some action. 9 times out of 10, when I ask a couple what their biggest struggle in their relationship is, they say one thing: communication. Couples think they have a hard time communicating with each other, but as we dig a little bit deeper, typically what we find out is that they're not really bad communicators. Both individuals in the relationship know how to listen, they know how to speak, they do a decent job sharing their feelings. When we really get down to the brass tacks, what they really struggle with is having difficult conversations. Most of us aren't taught how to manage the big emotions that come up when we're having hard conversations. And what happens in a marriage is that when you fail enough times at having one of those big difficult conversations, whether it's finances or sex or raising kids or in-laws or a long list of other things, what happens is we start avoiding those conversations. And that's when people start doing what we call walking on eggshells, or they become glorified roommates, because there's all these different conversations that they have to avoid inside their relationship if their relationship is going to continue to function. They're sick and tired of having these emotional blowups and these perpetual arguments. Well, I got sick of hearing people complain about not being able to communicate or have these hard conversations. So for the last year, I have been hard at work putting together an amazing course to teach people how to navigate difficult conversations successfully, how to manage those big, hard conversations that always end up in an argument, and do it in a way that leaves you both feeling happy, connected, fulfilled, and that turns the conflict that used to kind of linger inside your relationship, or that tension that used to just loom over you when you had these conversations for weeks or even months or days, and turn that into hours or minutes, or completely get rid of it altogether. These are amazing research-based principles that I'm going to be teaching you. Every single lesson comes with a list of action items, things that you can go do to apply the things that you're learning right away. And the course is called Say What You Need to Say, and you can get access to it by going to talktoyourspouse.com. I'm really excited about it. I hope you go check it out, and I'll be sharing more about it in future episodes. If you are the type of person who struggles having difficult conversations, you are not alone. And oftentimes all it takes is learning a couple of really cool skills, tools, or principles, and it shifts everything for you. So if that sounds like you, go to talktoyourspouse.com and you can sign up right now.